Hi everybody, it's Caryn Hartglass here, and you are listening to It's All About Food. Reacting to what's in the news recently, I decided to use this hour to celebrate Miyoko. You know Miyoko, right? She's one of the few awesome vegans that we know by one name. Miyoko Schinner has a long list of accomplishments, which includes 6 vegan cookbooks. She is best known for her vegan cheeses, founding Miyoko's Kitchen in 2014, which later became Miyoko's Creamery. Miyoko is a unique individual, kind, generous, creative, and courageous. And that's why the vegan world was shocked to discover on February 16th that Miyoko had been fired from the company she founded and bears her name. The story is unfolding before our eyes. She had been privately ousted from her role as CEO back in June of 2022. My friend and colleague, Michelle Simon, has reported that she joined the Miyoko Creamery board just a few weeks ago, and she sent an email to her subscribers, I am one of them, which noted an article recently published in the San Francisco Chronicle where Michelle was quoted. I want to read this part to you. Michelle Simon, founder of the Plant-Based Food Association, who was appointed by Schinner to Miyoko's board of directors this month, called the claims defamation disguised as a lawsuit. The lawsuit is a way to justify firing Schinner after the fact, said Simon. Part of what appears to be a smear campaign to diminish Schinner's reputation by a small number of board members. It's just pure insanity, she said. There's nothing good that can come of a public flogging of a revered leader of vegan food. I want you to know that Miyoko herself does not recommend boycotting her former company's products at this time. She explains in a video on Instagram that she is concerned that the company is being trashed. She would like people to express that it isn't that you don't like the brand. You don't like what's going on. She says she wants the brand to survive and be well. Now I am going to play for you 3 interviews I had with Miyoko in 2012, 2014, and 2016. Here's the excerpt from 2012, where the story about Miyoko's vegan cheese really begins when she published the groundbreaking cookbook, Artisan Vegan Cheese.
Welcome to It's All About Food again, Miyoko.
Hi, Caryn. It's nice to be on the show again.
Yes, thank you. Voice. You know how exciting this is that you've come up with this book. It's like everybody's screaming about it in your world.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. It really is, and in my kitchen it continues to be exciting because I'm always working on new recipes for new cheeses.
This is based on lots of things and work that other people have done, and we're evolving in so many ways as a species, and we're evolving with cheese making, which is something that's gone on for a long time, and why not evolve to using nuts and seeds in order to make cheese instead of animal excretions?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
And so I think I hope you realize it now and in the future, but I really think this is groundbreaking. I think this is going to be the foundation of a lot of future products. I hope we see them sooner than later, but I think this will really move people forward in making all kinds of wonderful different vegan cheeses.
Well, I certainly hope so, and that was my intent. I mean, I've been asked by people, why don't you just make them and sell them? But I really want to be able to give people the tools to do it themselves in their own kitchens. And, a lot of people can't even get the commercially available cheeses as they are right now. But one thing I want to point out about the cheeses in my book that are different from, what might be commercially available in vegan cheeses is that my cheeses are all cultured. And you're absolutely right. I took a tip from a lot of different people and lots of different, processes that are already out there. The raw foodists completely inspired me with their culturing nut-based cheeses, but then I just took it a few steps further. And instead of just making a basic cashew cheese, like, well, why couldn't I turn this into cheddar or Gruyere or or if I did this, if I tweaked it this way, I added this, or I cooked it, or I cultured it longer, or to get a dry, hard cheese, what if I air dried it just like a regular cheese, because that's what you do with, the harder cheeses like Parmesans. They're all air dried for months and months and months.
I really want to think that more people are going to find their kitchens. I know we've gotten so far away from most people making their own food on a regular basis in their kitchen, and there is a certain amount of movement back there with food shows and people wanting to save on the cost of eating out, lots of different reasons, and just wanting to get healthier. So I'm always saying, find your kitchens, folks. But other than making salads and soups, vegan cheese is another level away, and it doesn't look like it's really complicated, but it is a little time-consuming. It does require some organization and a place to store things while you're waiting for them to grow.
Yeah. Well, okay, so in terms of time-consuming, they're absolutely not instant cheeses, although there is a chapter for practically instant ones that you can make. If you just can't wait, things that you can make in a day or in a few minutes, they are available. There's a chapter for that in my book. But there really isn't a lot of hands-on time for any of the cheeses. It's really just a matter of waiting, and that waiting can be anywhere from 24 hours to several weeks. And but the beauty of the cheeses is that they gain their sharpness from the culturing process, just like regular cheeses do. A lot of the commercial cheeses or a lot of the recipes that were available for vegan cheeses before involve getting that tang or the sharpness by adding something like lemon juice or vinegar, and then it really doesn't taste sharp. It just tastes a little bit tangy. And so, what I really wanted to do was to let nature take its own course. And so that's what you have to do. Sometimes, depending on the cheese, you might have to wait a couple of days, or you might have to wait a few weeks, depending on the texture and the flavor and the degree of sharpness you want. And then again, a lot of these cheeses actually taste better after they've been in your refrigerator for several months. It's strange, but they continue to age in your refrigerator. So it's kind of fun. It's exciting, and it is definitely more work than just going out and getting a package of something. But I think you're right. There is a movement towards getting back into the kitchen. I know that I make so much more myself now than I did. I have 3 kids, and they're all older now. But when they were little, I started buying. I remember the day I was shocked. I shocked myself when I went into the store and I bought a jar of marinara. I couldn't believe it because I'd never done that in my life. I'd always made everything from scratch, bread, vegan mayonnaise, everything.
But you get tired.
I just got tired and worn down, just like making food all the time to feed all these mouths. And so now they're older and I've got more time, and I'm sort of back in the kitchen now. My husband grows vegetables, and so from the harvesting to making our own, my own jams, breads, vegan mayonnaise, even vegan butter now, cheese, everything. Everything just, there's less packaging. My daughter gets upset about it. It's like, why do we have so much garbage? Look at all this packaging. And every time you go to the store, if you're not buying just, produce from the farmer's market, there's all that packaging to deal with. So,
I like to point out, most people do these things obviously for convenience, and they're overwhelmed and they have a lot of work to do.
Right.
But these things these fast foods and these convenient foods, if you really look at what it took to get them to your home, there's nothing fast or convenient about them. There's a big price.
No, it just didn't happen in your home. That's all.
That's right. There were factories and people and processing and energy and lots of stuff goes into it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I find a calm in my kitchen when I'm doing all this stuff. It's sort of like meditation for me. Now, I certainly didn't feel that way when my kids were little, so I sympathize with the millions of women out there, men out there that are trying to raise a family and put a decent meal on the table. So
small children, teenagers, they all take a lot of I don't know, a lot of everything.
Yeah.
Rejuvelac.
I use Rejuvelac as the probiotic in the recipes, and it's not. I actually also use non-dairy yogurt as as a thing that gets the culturing going as well too. So there's some recipes that don't use Rejuvelac at all. If you go through the book. But the reason I use that is because a lot of the raw food cheeses, the nut cheeses, will say to use a powder probiotic. And what I found is that, one, a lot of the powder probiotics are actually not vegan because they're grown in a dairy base.
Right.
And two, they're really expensive. You can spend $25 for a tiny little bottle. And I want my book to be accessible to as many people as possible all over the world. And, you know, in many parts of the world, you can't get a bottle of probiotics.
You know, you can buy a probiotic and it can all be dead. That's another problem.
That's true. And I've also used probiotic bottles. You know, I've used them before, and sometimes they just don't work. So I found that, you know, if I have a recipe for Rejuvelac in there, and you know, you can buy whole grains anywhere in the world. You can get some kind of whole grain, and you can sprout that and turn that into Rejuvelac. So that's why
it's genius. I just love the concept, and I can't wait to do it because, well, this whole probiotic thing, it's important to have them. We need probiotics in our gut. The powders are expensive, and I like the idea of making it fresh. It's got to be bitter.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I have to admit, sometimes I need to make a cheese, and I don't have time to make the Rejuvelac. I go down to Whole Foods and I buy a bottle. But I usually have some that's homemade sitting around. But you know, I run out and stuff like that happens. So.
Right. And then the other thing about making yogurt, I've made soy yogurt before. The last few times I tried it, it didn't work out so well, and now I know that I need to because it's always so thin. But the cashews you add to the soy milk.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways of doing it. I actually have a video on YouTube. If you go there and Google my name, Miyoko Schinner, homemade yogurt, you can watch a video where I show you how to make it. But, you know, I came up with that little trick of adding the raw cashews to the soy milk to enrich it because I find that the commercial the commercial non-dairy yogurts, like the soy yogurts, to be a little bland, and the only reason they're thick is that they thicken them with tapioca and some other stabilizers. So if you want to make a traditional homemade yogurt that's thick by itself, you can do it two ways. You can either boil down the soy milk for about 15 minutes so that it's reduced by about 1/3. And then you can make a really nice, rich, creamy soy yogurt that way. Or you can just, you know, throw in a handful of cashews into a quart of soy milk and puree that, and then use that to make your yogurt.
I can't wait to get started.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, I want you to get in your kitchen right now. Get off the phone. Get off the radio. Get in your kitchen.
Well, I'm going to go to the store right after this and buy a few things that I need. And I promise I'm going to do those things. The basic routine is pretty similar here with your different recipes. Some of them have some really lovely flavors, and by culturing them shorter or longer, you get different flavors. You use some oils to give some of your cheeses a more meltier feeling. You've got hard cheeses and just about anything you'd want to make. The cream cheeses look outstanding. And then,
well, the cream cheese is, you know, I know there's a lot of cream cheeses on the market, but the one thing I can say about the commercial vegan cheeses is that the first ingredient in most of them is oil. And then there is sometimes soy protein or soy milk, and then it's just, you know, basically it's oil with maybe a little bit of some sort of protein and then stabilizers. And to me, that doesn't seem like a whole food.
Nope.
So I really like to have foods that, you know, I want to be eating mostly whole foods. And I'm not as pure as your last guest. But you know, I do engage in what Chef AJ calls the evil trinity: salt, sugar, and oil on occasion. So, you know, I definitely choose what I eat sometimes with my taste buds, but for the most part, you know, 95% of the time, I do like to have a whole foods, plant-based diet, not, you know, eating processed vegan foods. So,
well, I
try to stay away from
I think we really need to go backwards as we're going forwards in time.
Yes.
And backwards in terms of using whole foods, getting all the chemicals out of our foods. You know, I have this crazy chemical engineering background, and yet I hate all of the chemical engineered foods that just shouldn't be. And I personally in most of my foods, I avoid oil and salt, but then I like to have some toppings and things and that's where some of the fat and the soy and the salt are, because it's just like a garnish. It's not the whole food is laden with oil and salt, and
right.
And that's where this cheese is wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't cook with a lot of oil and salt either, generally speaking. But what I found with my cheeses is I tried to make them as oil-free as possible. But I could not get them to melt unless there was some oil in them. But the first ingredient isn't oil; it's something else, like the soy yogurt. And then there is a little, there's enough oil in there to get them to melt. But nutritionally, they still stack up much better than their dairy counterparts, or or the stuff you get at the store. So, but most of the other cheeses, 90% of the cheeses in the book do not use oil at all. Because I've tried to avoid it, and they're based on relatively healthful ingredients.
Okay, so you don't have any immediate plans on making any of these cheeses yourself? I mean, for sale, for manufacturing?
Oh,
Who knows?
I've been in business before, as you know. But I am entertaining certain things, considering going into the restaurant business again.
Here's the thing.
That is something I am entertaining.
I mean, I'm sure you thought about all of this, but when you first came on the scene, and I will never forget it, I told you this the last time we spoke, but I remember the restaurant Now and Zen. It was near Japantown, and then there was, right? It was around Japantown, San Francisco, somewhere around there?
Absolutely, it was.
And then I was so excited when I was flying on United to have the Now and Zen cookie. The thing is, you were one of like our four persons. I don't want to say forefathers. But the timing, people weren't like ready yet. And now people are really. So it must have been very painful for you in that time. We didn't have the internet. You didn't have all this access to marketing. And now the time is really ripe for vegan cheese by Miyoko.
Yes, definitely. When I started, I was always constantly explaining to people why I didn't use dairy or eggs and why I didn't use sugar. Because, when I had Now and Zen, we didn't use any kind of sugar either. And I still don't. I typically use, natural sweeteners, I guess, that can be qualified as sugar by a lot of people, but, maple syrup and that sort of thing. So, the time is right now, and I am ready. I'm ready to take off. So, I'm hoping that this cheese thing goes somewhere. I love to teach. That's one of the things that is most important. That was the one thing about manufacturing that I really didn't like, was it was just sort of unilateral. I'm just putting food. I'm just, distributing food. But there was no.
Yeah, but people really want this. People really want vegan cheese. Now, I just was curious. When you're growing things, bacteria, have you ever had any batches go bad, or are there some safety concerns that we need to keep in mind?
Yes, and that is something that's very, very important that I should state, is that this is not an exact science. And different temperatures, how clean the equipment you're using, the ambient temperature of the room, the humidity, all of that comes into play in how your cheeses perform. And so, if you're working at, 90% humidity and 110 degree middle of summer, your cheeses are going to culture much faster, and they can go bad much faster as well, too. So, there's things that you have to watch out for. It's not as simple as providing a recipe for, making a pasta sauce or something.
Right.
It's a little more complex.
Yes,
it's an art, and you really have to watch these things. And it would be wonderful if I went into manufacturing. I'd have to figure out some sort of, uniform, temperature that they would all be cultured in. I'd have to have something like a cave or something like that, where they'd be temperature controlled and all of that, so that you can sort of predict the outcome of the product.
Yes.
But the fact is, I give a range on how long you should culture these cheeses, because it depends. I mean, even in my own kitchen, sometimes the sharp cheddar takes 48 hours, and sometimes it takes 96. before it's ready.
Well, I know somebody's going to do it. I know some people are going to start doing it, and it's just a question of when, and we're all evolving now, and vegan cheeses are there. And so thank you. Thank you for getting the cheese ball rolling. Thank you, Miyoko, for joining me again on It's All About Food, and all the best to you with artisan vegan cheeses. I can't wait to dig into it.
Thank you, Caryn, for having me.
That was part one, my interview with Miyoko in 2012. What's amazing to me is how quickly Miyoko's kitchen was created and grew so fast. You heard it when I said, okay, so you don't have any immediate plans on making any of these cheeses yourself for sale, for manufacturing? And Miyoko responds, well, I've been in business before, but I am entertaining certain things. I'm considering going into the restaurant business again, and that's something I'm entertaining. And then, of course, as we say, the rest is history. Now let's go to an excerpt from my 2014 interview after Miyoko's Kitchen has been founded.
The last time we talked, you had come out with this wonderful book, and you were showing all of us how to make our own cheese. We talked a little bit about manufacturing the cheese, and here you are 2 years later, and it's happening.
It really is happening. And 2 years ago when I did speak to you, I think, people were saying, well, why did you write a book instead of just starting another company? And because I'd had companies in the past and run my own businesses in the past, I just wasn't thrilled. The idea of starting a new company just wasn't quite as appealing. So I didn't really picture it myself doing what I'm doing right now. But, it did. But enough people kept asking me, why don't you just make cheese? I mean, I love your book, but I don't want to go through the hassle. I'm just never going to make anything in it. I'd rather just buy it.
You really had to do it.
Yes.
No regrets yet, right? Everybody's so excited about this product.
No regrets. No, absolutely. Yeah, we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I tell people, I've been saying this for years. People are probably tired on this show of me saying it, but I'm always saying, find your kitchen, get into your kitchen, make your food. I know that you make most things by scratch, and I think for the most part, our basic foods we should. Cheese is a little complicated.
That's right. It is. It does take, and that's why most people don't make. I mean, there are cheese making classes in the dairy world all over, but most people don't embark down, on that path because it's just very detailed. There's a lot. It's a real commitment. And as I mentioned before, patience is the most important ingredient in any kind of process that involves culturing or fermentation or aging, So it takes a while.
Yeah, so culturing and fermentation, this is the part that gives these cheeses, all cheeses, their unique flavor and tang and body. But we're dealing with microscopic little living things, and they can either go your way or another way. And you were talking about this the first time, controlling the temperature and controlling everything you need to make a consistent and safe product.
That's right. And so that's something we had to explore really, really deeply and thoroughly before we started this company, because we do want to grow. We don't want to just be selling at farmers markets. We want to be a global company eventually. And so we wanted to make sure that we were producing something that was safe. And so we actually hired a couple of cheese consultants who have been absolutely fabulous. Cheese consultants to the dairy industry who helped us really set those parameters and figure out how to, safe practices. And we spent a lot of time developing what's called a HACCP plan, which stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point. So we would have all of our controls in place. So not just temperature, but measuring the pH and the water activity and all of this stuff, so we can be sure that we are producing a safe product and that it's a consistent product. So we're not just winging it each time, which is wonderful. It can be very artisanal, kind of winging it in your own kitchen. And as long as your surfaces are clean and all of that, you can generally have a safe product. But every single time, your cheese is going to come out a little bit different because of all, the lack of these controls. So when you mass produce, you need to have that in place. But it's interesting because that's really how man's been making cheese for thousands of years.
Yes.
Even in Europe today, there are people, and I'm not a French speaker. I'm trying to remember the proper. There's a proper French term for the person who ages the cheeses. And so they typically, they often might have a natural cave. And their sole job, they don't actually make cheese. All they do is age it, and they make sure that but they're doing it in caves, and that's how people have been doing it for many, many, many eons. So it's not, if you think about the kind of bacteria that's in cheese or any kind of fermented product, the idea of having something that's cultured where the pH is low enough, and you have a low enough water activity, those are going to be things that are going to prevent the wrong stuff from growing. So it's really controlling all of that. So there are some wonderful things that are growing in all fermented foods, from yogurt to kimchi to pickles, that are going to prevent the bad pathogens from growing.
Right, and in different areas, when we ferment things, it takes the bacteria that's in the area. So
that's right. Mm-hmm.
Now, you're in a controlled facility, and maybe that won't be as affected with the environment outside. But
I think there's always going to be airborne bacteria and airborne yeast that are going to get onto things. But we do have, but we're not, sterilizing the air or anything. But we do have a very, very clean facility, and visitors will be able to see it when we open up our retail shop sometime next year. We have these huge, beautiful picture windows that look into both the production facility where we're making the cheese, as well as the aging room. We have the state-of-the-art aging room where we'll have up to 10,000 units of cheese on racks aging. And so you'll be able to look into it and see all these beautiful rounds of cheese aging in there. So you will be able to see it, and I think people will be impressed how clean and sanitary our facility is, because we've really taken all precautions to do that. But despite that, there's still air, and anytime you have any kind of air, there's going to be some form of bacteria and yeast. So you can't remove all of that. So some of that will be there.
And it's good.
Yeah.
In some ways, I understand how we want to make products that are like the products that we've been familiar with. On the other hand, I think that all of these lovely vegan foods that have come along over the years are unique and individual and should stand on their own.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some people might whine and say, why do you want to have cheese that tastes just like cheese? Why don't you eat cheese?
Right.
And they say that about meat analogs too, and all of that is just nonsense. We love
because we don't necessarily become vegan because we don't. It's not because we hated meat or cheese. It's because we're trying to
know who
protect
they
animals are. I mean, we did it for another reason, but it didn't mean that we didn't like those flavors. Mm-hmm. And I don't see any problem with reliving those flavors. I mean, it's not just, is it really cheese, or is it that sensation of something that's fatty and rich and creamy that you can have with your wine on a Friday night when you're trying to unwind or something? I think there is an occasion for all of these things. I myself don't eat my cheese on a daily basis because I'm more of a kind of a beans and rice and veggie kind of gal. But I certainly want to have sort of an elegant spread of cheeses, for special occasions, and be able to enjoy that without harming my body or the environment or animals.
For that rich, luxurious, lovely flavor.
That's really what it is. It's just enjoying a bit of luxury. That's really what it's for, and that's sort of the meaning of it. And I definitely have an interest in coming out with a line of more everyday cheeses, your Swiss and your cheddar and the kind of stuff that you put on a pizza, the mozzarella or whatever, grilled cheese sandwich. But I really wanted to set the bar high when we rolled out our product and come out with just a unique line of just stellar artisanal products that would show people, not just vegans, but
everybody.
Mm-hmm.
These are cheeses. Mm-hmm.
You can do this, and you can do this with plants.
Yeah, there's only real ingredients in your cheeses.
Thank you for noticing.
There's only real ingredients. Yes. There's no gums or anything.
Right. Yeah. There's no. I mean, if you look at a lot of the plant-based or vegan cheeses on the market, the first ingredient in a lot of them is oil. And then the second ingredient is some sort of starch. And so you're paying whatever, people say, oh, our cheeses are expensive because they're $10 to $12 for one round. But, when you go out and buy one of these vegan cheeses, you're paying $4.99 for oil and starch and gums. So you're not paying for real food. You're paying for...
And not only are these foods real, but they're mostly organic.
Not only mostly, yes, that's correct. We are certified organic. All of our products except for the ash. The ash is made from organic cashews as well, but that product is not certified organic because the ash can't be. So, but everything else is.
The one that I tried was the cheddar. Let's see, I'm looking for the actual name.
Is it the Aged English Sharp Farmhouse?
It was the Aged English Sharp Farmhouse, yes.
Yeah. Well, we can't really use words like cheddar, or we can't even really say cheese, just so you know. We're not supposed to because they are called standards of identity, and they can only be used for products made out of dairy milk. So either goat's milk or cow's milk, but not from cashew milk.
Wow.
So we have had to come up with our own name to describe these beautiful products, and that is cultured nut product. So next time you smile for the camera, say cultured nut product.
Well, I will. Cultured nut product. But you know what?
Yeah.
We need to work on getting the cheese to be a little more, what do I want to say, open-minded. Just like we're fighting for rights for individuals, for freedoms, I think cheese needs to be a broader term.
Free. Yes, absolutely. And, just like soy milk at one time, they had the same battle, and they eventually won. So it's very, very possible that eventually we will be able to call our product cheese. But right now, everybody knows we're talking about a cheese alternative product. We just, try to avoid using that word in the media. When we're fine for other people, to let other people call it cheese. We just can't do it ourselves.
So
funny.
But the ones that I've seen in the store, the ones made with all the artificial ingredients that don't taste very good, they all say cheese on them, soy cheese, or they say cheese alternative. Is that what they say?
Yeah, it's a California law ruling actually for manufacturers in California, and there are lots of companies that just aren't on the radar. California just doesn't have the bandwidth to go out and shut down every manufacturer that uses the word cheese on their packaging. But we just wanted to play it safe. We just didn't want to take that risk, so we didn't.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that Aged English Sharp Farmhouse nut milk loveliness. And it has a drier, firmer texture than the other cheeses that I tried, and it had that drierness consistency that you get in those other things that we don't want to talk about anymore.
That's right, and that was what I strived for. We wanted to have a cultured nut product that really was reminiscent of an aged English sharp cheddar, because nothing like that exists on the market.
Right.
So without using the word cheddar, we came up with Aged English Sharp Farmhouse. Without using the word cheddar, you knew immediately what we were trying to do, which tells me that, hey, we kind of did okay there. And that one is aged. That's one of the rounds that gets aged for, I can't tell you exactly how long, because that's proprietary. But anyway, it gets aged for weeks and weeks and weeks in our aging room.
You have a number of directions to go in now. I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, and you're just getting started. But you mentioned making some of the more everyday cheeses, but also there are lots of cheeses that are aged for a very, very, very long time, and that adds to the expense and the cost, of course. But is there a plan to do that? I mean, how long? What's the longest you've ever aged a cheese yourself?
Over a year.
And what was it like?
It was very, very hard, like a Parmesan.
Mm-hmm.
And, it gets stronger in flavor. And I have, you can grate it on a microplane. It's so fine. It's sort of granular and, hard. And so there's a lot we can do, but, having to age cheese for a year takes up a lot of space. So it's not real estate that we have right now. So but that is definitely an interest that I have somewhere down the line. I would love to do that. Another thing that we want to roll out in spring of next year is a bloomy rind cultured nut product. And, if some of you listeners may not know what a bloomy rind cheese is, but those are the cheeses that have that white mold on the outside, like Camembert and Brie. So we have one that's phenomenal, and it's as it gets older, the flavor gets stronger and gooier in the middle. And our cheese consultants are the ones that we hired. These are their words. They tasted it and they said, "I would buy this." This is just like Brie.
Wow.
So that was, to me, the highest compliment. And, so we want to roll that one out. That one's a little finickier than what we're doing right now.
I'm just
so
curious what those
those
consultants thought about what you were doing.
I think they thought we were crazy initially, and now they love us, and we love them. They're phenomenal. And I predict they're going to be vegan because they're really interested in it.
Oh,
They've had many meals with us and ask all these questions about veganism, and they're just so interested.
Wow.
And they've done so much to help promote our product as well, too, to omnivores. Like when they go speaking, they served our cheese to a big group of people at a food festival, and the response was phenomenal. People didn't believe it was vegan.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the day when a movie comes out and the Miyoko's vegan cheese wins over the French vegan cheese, just like what was that movie with the California wines versus the French wines. Thank you for talking to me today, Miyoko. I'm so excited. I'm so glad you're doing this. Time marches on, and all good things are happening.
Well, I'll talk to you maybe another 2 years, Caryn.
That was an excerpt of my interview with Miyoko from 2014, and I did get to talk with her 2 years later in 2016, and you'll hear that in a moment. Miyoko came up with the name Cultured Nut Products because she couldn't call them cheese in California, but she sued and won, and that benefits all of us. Butter and cheese can be made from plant-based milks and be called butter and cheese. Even the FDA recently ruled that dairy alternatives made from soy, almond, and oat beverages can now be called milk. Now let's listen to my last interview in 2016 celebrating Miyoko's vegan mozzarella and cultured vegan butter.
I'm really grateful that you're spending this half hour with me because you are the most amazing person out there these days doing a gazillion things, and we want to get to all of that. I think right now the thing that most people are excited about is your cheese. I noticed Veg News on the front of their website is talking about your new vegan mozzarella. Let's talk about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the mozzarella is fantastic. I'm really excited about it because it's our first truly meltable cheese. But what makes it different from all the other meltable cheeses on the market, well, there's several reasons. One is that it's something that you can truly enjoy either cold, sliced in a caprese salad or in a sandwich, or melted on a pizza or in a sandwich. And the melting ability of this cheese is absolutely phenomenal. You can't tell it apart from regular cheese. If you put it on a pizza like a margarita pizza, it really looks like fresh buffalo mozzarella. It bubbles, it browns, it's really melty and gooey. It's absolutely lovely. Once again, it's like all of our other cheeses in that it is a cultured cheese. So we add cultures to it, which is what gives it the unique flavor of cheese rather than adding cheese flavor to it. So we make it in a very sort of traditional mozzarella type of way. We also brine it in brine, which is salt water, to give it extra flavor. So it really is, there's a bit of artistry involved in making this cheese, and I'm really thrilled that we were able to produce this one.
All right, so here's something I want to ask you. You started making vegan food available for the public with a restaurant in San Francisco a long time ago. You started manufacturing food a long time ago. Then you took some time off, you raised your family, you came back. What's different now?
Well, the whole marketplace is different. The whole world is different. I think people are waking up to the necessity of changing the way they eat because they're beginning to realize the huge impact it makes not only on their own health but on the planet, on animals. I think when I first became a vegetarian or vegan back in the 70s and then vegan in the 80s, most people who went vegan did it for health reasons. There really wasn't that much information out there about the environment nor about the unethical treatment of dairy cows. People who didn't want to hurt animals basically just didn't eat them. They were vegetarian. But unless you were really, really worried about lactose or something, a lot of people just didn't go vegan. It just they didn't understand why. Today, people understand why. There's so much information out there thanks to the internet and so many wonderful books and publications, all the information that's out there today. It's almost, it's impossible when you look at the facts straight in the eye and realize the suffering that happens to, the whole veal industry exists because of the dairy industry, for example. When you realize the cruelty that dairy cows have to undergo in order to be able to provide milk for us, it's really hard to continue using dairy products. I mean, it's hard not to go vegan when you really, really get it. So I think that's really the main difference, is that the world is just so much more ready to make that transition. The world, humankind has evolved, is changing slowly and surely towards a more compassionate life. I really do believe that we as a species are evolving for the better. This is sort of the last, hurdle that we have to get over is we are treating other humans better. I know there's still a lot of suffering in the world and a lot of wrongdoing, but just overall compared to, the Crusades or something, we've made progress.
Just briefly about those cows, those precious cows. There are still people that think if they're buying organic milk, organic dairy, that they think that the cows are treated better, and maybe to some degree they have a little more space, maybe they're getting some better food, but they're still being raped, period.
They're still being raped. Their babies are still taken away from them upon birth so that we can in turn drink their milk. So they're having their children abducted immediately, and they are very emotional creatures, and sometimes they chase after their calves. There's lots of stories and videos you can watch about that. Not only that, they're still slaughtered. It's not like they spend the rest of their life, grazing in the grass once their milk production goes down. Once their milk production goes down, they're no longer needed.
They're hamburger.
And so they go off. They become hamburger. It's almost worse than if you're just a beef cow. At least, the cows that you see grazing the grass outside are typically beef cows. And if you see a cow with a calf, then they're usually beef. And, they look like they're happy, and they probably are for a couple of years until the slaughter truck comes along to carry them off to the slaughterhouse. But dairy cows tend to live most of their lives indoors because they have to be. In fact, it's not just dairy cows. It's the same thing with goats. There's I live sort of in the center of artisanal cheese production. There's lots and lots of very very high-end artisanal creameries where I live. And I was just at a trade show last week where my table, the Miyoko's kitchen table, was right next to a high-end goat cheese table. And the woman was really nice, and I was chatting with her about goats because I've started a little sanctuary at my house. I have a little farm, and I have goats I've been rescuing. So I struck up a conversation. I asked her, what do you do with your male goats? Oh, they sell them usually when they're babies for meat or whatever. And she made kind of a strange comment. She goes, well, goats are very picky eaters, which I know. It's not true that they eat anything. She goes, for example, they don't eat grass. And I'm like, what do you mean they don't eat grass? My goats eat grass. They're grazing in the grass all the time. They also they also browse on trees, especially willow and all kinds of things like that. But they definitely are out there, chomping on tall, green, fresh spring grass. And I kind of looked at her quizzically, wondering, and she goes, our goats, they only go out 3 or 4 times a year. And I said, what do you mean they only go out 3 or 4 times a year? And she's like, well, they have to be indoors because they're for milking. So that's why she doesn't, even though she's had goats for 30 years, she doesn't know that they actually do eat grass because her goats are indoors. I mean, this is how the industry operates. These poor goats that are chev makers, are confined to a life indoors, except for 3 or 4 times a year. So that's the industry. And then, their babies, of course, are taken away at birth and sold for whatever, for slaughter or whatever else, maybe 4-H if they're lucky.
There's this romance around goat cheese, goat butter, and goat milk.
There's so much romance around, goat cheese, and it's, it's not very romantic when you see the life they lead.
Because the goat milk molecule is supposed to be more like the human milk, but it's not without exploitation, as you just described.
Well, why don't we just have moms donate milk, like human moms, and we can start making breast milk cheese?
Sure, and pay them
that
for
could
it.
be cruelty-free. I mean, and, moms could get paid for contributing their milk.
But you
And
know,
then
the
what did their
natural
babies
reaction
eat?
is what? Ew!
Ew, it'd be ew. And then,
Ew.
what did the babies eat? Well, the babies would then have to drink formula. And then people would say, well, that's really cruel. That's unnatural. But that's exactly what happens to these poor dairy cattle and goats.
You know, I'm wondering, you said Miyoko's Kitchen, your cheese factory, is near some other artisanal creameries. That must put a lot of cultures in the air that all of you share.
Oh, I don't, there's cultures everywhere in the air. It doesn't matter where you are. And there's cultures on apples and lettuce and just about everything. There's basically the cultures are lactic acid, bacilli, and they're everywhere. They're everywhere to be found in the air on fruits and vegetables. It's all over the place. But as a small batch artisanal operation, we have clean rooms and air filtration and all of this, and they all operate in the same way. And we buy non-dairy cultures from a proprietary blend that we buy, that we source, that are made in a lab, or grown in a lab. So it's we're not making, but as they ferment, as they age, they do capture additional cultures, or bacteria and yeast from the air, which is, of course, gives it a unique flavor. And that's the case wherever you are in the world. You're gonna, if I make cheese here and take the same recipe and make it in, let's say, France in a certain area, it could taste slightly different because of whatever is present in the air.
Now, speaking of France, the last time we spoke, I think your cheese company was just starting, and you told me that you were working with these French cheesemakers, and they were actually becoming curious about what you were doing. So is there an update on that story?
The people that I was working with were sort of consultants who helped us design our aging room. We're not working, they kind of played their part. We're not working with them right now, but they were very, very intrigued by what we were doing. In fact, they were teaching a cheese class and giving some lectures on cheese at a cheese festival locally, a big one. And they thought it'd be really interesting to sample our cheese. So, we sent it to them. And I don't know if I told you this story or not, but somehow there was a mix-up. Our cheese got served at the wrong event, not the one where they were going to be, deliberately talking about it, but it got served at the regular cheese event, not the alternative cheese event. But it got served at the regular cheese event and just served alongside all the other cheeses, and presented to people as dairy cheese. And no one knew the difference.
Of course.
The people loved it. So there you go. And these are, these weren't vegans, so they weren't.
Did that really happen by mistake, or maybe the universe wanted that to happen? But it's a great story.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
The cheese is really good, and I don't know, but I think history is going to look back on you, Miyoko, for really doing some groundbreaking work in terms of plant-based cheeses.
Well, that is very, very generous of you to say that.
It's true. I mean, I know a lot of people have worked on cheese, but I think you've done more than anybody, in my personal opinion.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. So I'll let you record history, okay?
Oh, history. If we're here in the future, I hope so. But that will just require everybody moving from dairy cheese to plant-based cheese, amongst a few other things.
It's going to happen because the alternative isn't viable and it's not sustainable. So,
that's right. Now
we're running out of land. We're running out of resources. We're running out of all sorts of things that will make this industry just sort of self-destruct eventually. I don't think we're too far off from that.
No, I want to talk more about deliciousness. Can we talk about butter?
Yes.
Butter.
Oh, butter. Oh, yes.
Let's
Slather
talk about
me in
butter.
Vegan butter. It's delicious. It's a cultured, we just came out with a cultured European style butter. And you're in New York, so Whole Foods carries both our mozzarella and our butter. We start out with cashew milk. We make our own cashew milk and we add cultures to it and we ferment the cashew milk so it develops this sort of tangy flavor. And then we combine it with coconut oil, organic coconut oil, of course, and some other ingredients to produce. And then we churn it, so it's a whole new churn on butter. It's shaped like butter. It looks like butter. Like a European-style butter, and you can do whatever you want that you normally would with dairy butter with this butter, whether it's slathering it on your pancakes or, on toast as thick as cheese, or you can melt it, you can whip it to make buttercream. It browns like butter, which is what margarine doesn't brown, but this does brown. It's absolutely lovely, and we have won a couple awards for it. We were at the Natural Products Expo, which is the largest natural products trade show in the world. We were there a couple of weeks ago, and we won the coveted Nexty Award, and this is an award for innovation. Innovative new products, and we won out of 500 nominations.
Oh,
so,
everybody!
I mean, the butter did, so that was a huge honor.
Woo!
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So we were thrilled. So yeah,
now,
the butter is great.
Is the butter you're selling similar at all to the recipes you have in the Homemade Vegan Pantry?
It is similar. It's not. It's better because the one of the in my book is not fermented. It's not cultured. It's kind of a quickie recipe for someone to make at home. This is the one we make here is a 3-day process. So that gives you an idea of. There's an extra layer of flavor that is hard to capture when you just do it at home, unless you go through that whole fermentation process. So there's a lot of wonderful things you can do at home. You can definitely replicate, almost everything we do, you can do at home if you want to take the trouble to do so. Just like with any good dairy cheese, you can make it at home too if you take the time and the effort and have the proper equipment. So we just want to make it easy, I mean, not everybody wants to spend a month making cheese, so we want to make it for you. It's the same thing with butter.
Now, the cultures, they're actually good for us.
They are. They're lactic acid bacteria, so they're basically, what we like to call probiotics or whatnot. They're healthy for the gut. Fermentation is one of the keys to health, and man has been fermenting food for thousands and thousands of years. So definitely any food that contains a fermented component is going to be good for you.
Now, you mentioned the goats. This sanctuary. Tell us a little bit more about that. How many goats do you have, and where do they come from?
Well, we moved to a ranch last summer with this crazy idea we'd start rescuing animals. The first animals we rescued were 2 goats from Animal Place, which is a wonderful sanctuary in Grass Valley. And, in fact, we're going to be doing a fundraiser for Animal Place at my house on May 22nd, so if anybody wants to attend that, be sure to just go to animalplace.org. But anyway, so we got these 2 goats, and they were strays. They were males. They're of a breed that's specifically known for dairy production, but the males, of course, don't produce milk. So they're usually, as I mentioned, either sold off or sometimes abandoned if, they don't grow big enough for meat or whatever. So anyway, so these 2 were abandoned in a field. So that's where they came from. And then I have another goat and another sheep that are in love with each other, Benny and June, named after that Johnny Depp movie. But anyway, Benny and June are 2 oddball, different species that love each other. And they were raised in a dog run, isolated in a dog run without any grass or anything. They really had never walked more than 4 feet. It was like they'd spent 6 of their years. They're about 6 years old. So we rescued them from Farm Sanctuary, or not rescued them from, but Farm Sanctuary rescued them, and then we adopted them from Farm Sanctuary. And then we also have 3 pot-bellied pigs that were once again purchased by somebody as pets, and then the man died, and then they had to find a new home. Then we have 17 chickens, including 2 roosters. 1 transgender rooster, 1 rooster that everybody thought, including Farm Sanctuary, thought was a hen. And after 9 months, all of a sudden started displaying rooster-like qualities and then turned into a full-blown rooster about 5 or 6 months after they normally, become roosters or reveal those rooster-like characteristics. So that was sort of unusual. We're going to be adopting more animals. We have plenty of room. We have lots of acres. And it's wonderful. I've had wonderful volunteers that have stepped up and helped me, when I travel or whatnot. So animals are getting attention and lots of acres to roam. And
where is this?
We are in West Marin, which is kind of north of San Francisco, and it's absolutely lovely. I don't know. I find so much peace being with the animals like I've never found. I could spend hours and hours and hours, and when I'm with the animals, you're just sort of in the moment with them connecting, and you're not thinking about anything else, and all your worldly troubles just go away because nothing really matters except, giving them another willow branch to chomp on.
I was just talking earlier about the Easter holiday, and one of the things that's important for many people during Easter after they've gone through their services and talked about the precious, peaceful lamb is to go and eat lamb. And
isn't that strange?
Isn't that strange?
I just don't get it. I just don't get the disconnect at all. And where I am, I'm in farmland, so we're surrounded. The name of our little sanctuary is Rancho Compasión. We're surrounded by all these ranches with everything from there are lots of horse ranches, but lots and lots of cattle, sheep. They're just all over the place. Down the street, you see the little veal crate, the little white huts that if you didn't know what they were before, if you ever drive to the country, you see these little huts that are lined up one after the other. They house individual veal calves that are very sad and lonely and are just awaiting their day of slaughter to be your dinner.
There's another human invention. So anybody can just Google veal calf containers you can get pictures of them. It's just another obscene human creation.
Yes, it's absolutely awful.
Okay, and you can see them up in
in
the West Marin area.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Oh yeah, you see them, and sometimes I just feel like pulling over and just going and rescuing one of them. But
of course, but then they'd put you in jail.
They would. So I just keep hoping that, one of them will just escape or something and be by the side of the road, and I'll be able to put it in my car and drive off or something. But
anyway. That's again where money could really help, because if we all could, we could buy up all of those animals and save them, but then they'd probably just artificially inseminate more and make more. Yeah. So the trick is to stop eating them, and one way to do that is to move from dairy, cow-based, and goat milk-based cheeses over to the plant-based, nut milk-based cheeses, and that brings us back to Miyoko's Kitchen. There's lots of choices. Have the flavors developed at all, or they're pretty much the same for the cheeses? And do you have some that you're aging a little longer, or not really?
Well, that's the issue right now. We are actually looking for a larger facility to move into, because we have limited aging capacity, and we can only age so many thousands of units per month in our aging room, and that limits our production. I would love to age. Okay, we do have cheeses that we have aged just as an experiment for several months, and they are absolutely phenomenal. And we'd love to be able to introduce a line of cheeses like Parmesan and things that are aged for 8 to 12 months. We don't have the capacity right now, so right now we have to kind of. I would say the cheeses that we release are on the young side, meaning that, they could be aged longer, but we have such demand that, we're pushing them out a little bit sooner than we would like to. But they're still delicious. And if you ever get a young cheese, like one of the farmhouses that seems not quite as hard as you like, wrap it in wax paper and keep it in your refrigerator. It will actually continue to age in your fridge and get harder. Some of the cheeses, I've had in my fridge for over a year, and they can become like a Parmesan, in that you can grate it very, very finely over pasta or something.
Wow, that's exciting. Yeah. And we have a lot to look forward to.
Miyoko founded Miyoko's Creamery in 2014 and raised more than $85 million in funds. The company's products are now sold at more than 20,000 stores across the country, including Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and Walmart. I hope you've enjoyed these moments in history I have put together based on interviews with Miyoko. I know I did. And I hope the lawsuit is thrown out and Miyoko can go on creating beautiful things. I also hope that Miyoko's Creamery continues to produce quality products and not cheapen them to make more money for venture capitalists who originally supported Miyoko's vision. Here is a quote from Miyoko, printed in the San Francisco Chronicle article I mentioned earlier. She says, "I had the same ideas everywhere else. The way we save the world is through market-based solutions. The only thing we need to do is swap the product out, substituting cheeseburgers with Beyond Meat and Miyoko's cheese, for instance. Now I've rethought my position. Schinner regrets taking on major venture capital funding, but did so to promote her broader mission of ending animal farming. I still think you need to have more options, but I do not believe that so-called market-based solutions will change the world fast enough. I think you have to get to people's hearts and minds, and that's achieved through activism." And I agree. That's our mission here at Responsible Eating and Living, and what we often talk about on It's All About Food. Please consider supporting the nonprofit Rancho Compasión, farmed animal sanctuary founded by Miyoko in 2015. In addition, there is LEAP, Leaders for Ethics, Animals, and the Planet, the first of its kind humane education program to reach high school students as a compassionate alternative to traditional agricultural programs like 4-H and FFA. This was started by 3 nonprofit animal sanctuaries in Northern California: Jameson Humane, Blackberry Creek, and Miyoko's Rancho Compasión. Thanks for listening. I am Caryn Hartglass, and this has been another episode of It's All About Food. Have a delicious week.